On the clear glass coffee table sat a pile of freshly washed cherries, each one plump and bright red, almost impossible to ignore. Beside them, a mini robot kept extending its mechanical arm, picking up cherries one by one and feeding them into the mouth of the teenager sprawled lazily across the sofa. In the corner of the living room, a speaker was blasting an overdramatic web novel. Brock Samson threw a single punch that sent 18 burly men flying, then rushed to his girl's side and anxiously bent down to check her wounds. Evan Cole spat a pit into the trash can next to him, picked up his phone, switched to a different story, and continued leisurely listening while eating cherries. He had enjoyed this kind of happy, carefree life for 18 years. Maybe it was because he'd read too many novels, but Evan actually felt that he fit the standard protagonist template perfectly, rich, even if it was family money. Good-looking, not to the point of making the whole planet scream, but still. Smart, always in the top 5 on exams. He'd even modified that little robot himself. Plus, he had a childhood best friend who matched the typical love interest archetype perfectly. If that wasn't standard protagonist equipment, what was? Suddenly, a strange, eerie tune came from the speaker. Evan's eyes shot open. He hadn't been paying attention when he switched stories, he'd accidentally picked a horror novel. His one embarrassing, hard-to-admit weakness was that he was afraid of ghosts. Evan closed the audiobook app and was about to shift positions to keep eating when a sharp pain twisted in his stomach. The plate of cherries was noticeably emptier. He tried to remember how many he'd eaten. It seemed almost 5 pounds. The thought had barely crossed his mind when the stomach pain became unbearable. He let out a cry, instantly regretted programming the robot, and bolted straight for the bathroom. He should have stuck to a real person feeding him. A robot had no sense of moderation. Ev. Just as the bathroom door slammed shut, a gentle voice called from downstairs. But Evan was in too much agony to hear anything. Footsteps approached. A young man in a white shirt stopped by the sofa, his gaze sweeping over the robot before landing on the pile of cherry pits in the trash. He could almost picture Evan sprawled on the couch, eating in pure bliss. Sam Hartman sighed softly. How could you eat so many? You're going to get a stomachache. Too late. Came a weak, pained reply from inside the bathroom. Hearing that, Sam stepped closer to the door. His handsome face showed clear concern. Should I call an ambulance? I just ate too much. No ambulance needed. Evan's voice was hoarse, carrying a deep, unspoken misery. Go away. With you standing there, I can't, do my thing. Go on, get out. Sam couldn't help but laugh. He knew Evan usually seemed carefree and easygoing, but underneath, he was actually very sensitive and prideful. He went downstairs and asked the housekeeper to come up and clean the cherry pits. Oh my, I forgot to remind the young master. Seeing the empty plate, Mrs. Landers panicked. Will he be okay eating so many? He'll be fine. He just won't want to look at cherries for the next few days. Sam waved his hand with a smile and sat down on the sofa to play games. Half an hour later, Evan staggered out of the bathroom, one hand clutching his stomach, the other bracing against the wall. He had pushed so hard that the veins on the back of his hand stood out, and his bright red fingertips had turned pale. His usually cheerful, fair face was now drenched in cold sweat. Before Evan could say anything, Sam had already noticed his bad state and rushed over to support him. Maybe, take me to the hospital, Evan managed with difficulty. As soon as he finished speaking, his expression changed. He pushed weakly at Sam and doubled over, dry heaving. Take me to the hospital. I can't die like this. His face was ashen as. He leaned against the wall. The nausea was getting worse, and his stomach felt like tiny people were stabbing him with knives, torturing him non-stop. Before Sam could respond, Evan's vision went dark. Instinctively, he tried to brace his head against the wall to keep from falling, but he pushed too hard. With a thud, his head slammed against the wall. He vaguely felt lucky that the stomach pain was worse than the head pain. The last thing he remembered before passing out in Sam's arms was gripping his shirt tightly. Don't let me die. He hadn't been the protagonist long enough. He couldn't die. What if his next life wasn't as good as this one? Right before his consciousness faded completely, Evan suddenly remembered all kinds of novels he'd read. Wasn't there one about someone who ate too many cherries and became a vegetable, then their soul transmigrated to another world? Evan's eyes snapped open. The first thing that relieved him was that he was still conscious, still able to move, and his surroundings were extremely familiar, his own bedroom in the family's penthouse overlooking downtown Los Angeles. The back of his head burned with a dull, throbbing pain. The moment he sat up, he had to hold his head in his hands. Sam? Sam Hartman? Mrs. Landers? He called out several times to no answer. His throat was dry and sore. He stumbled out of bed to get some water. But as soon as he put his feet in his slippers, his knees buckled, and he crashed to the floor, his head spinning. At least the stomach pain was gone. He must have taken some medicine, but in its place was a splitting headache. At the same time, his mind felt like it had been split into a dozen pieces, each one thinking its own thoughts. His consciousness in chaos, Evan muttered to himself. Just as he managed to crawl back onto the bed, all his thoughts finally unified. No longer scattered, they became clearer than ever. Wait. What the hell was this sudden memory? Sam Hartman was the beloved of the entire world? His best friend was a professional troublemaker named Jake? His desk mate at school was the one everyone hated? And he himself was a vicious cannon fodder villain? The slender teenager stood against the light, his fair, delicate face full of confusion and panic. As his body trembled uncontrollably, his pajamas became disheveled. Evan swallowed hard, covered his face, and slowly lay back down on the bed, trying to turn himself into a thoughtless corpse. What the hell was this? Had he mutated after passing out? Had his brain been eaten by zombies? Otherwise, how could he go from protagonist to vicious cannon fodder? The door opened. The housekeeper came in with a tray of food and saw that he was awake. She immediately called downstairs, Mr. Hartman, the young master is awake. Just hearing the name Sam Hartman made Evan's brain automatically bring up the new information associated with that name. Sam Hartman, the central character in the novel Crazy About You. Because of his good nature, his warm smile, and his thoughtfulness, everyone in the story doted on him. Evan buried his face in the blanket, kicked off his slippers, and said in a choked voice, Mrs. Landers, you're mistaken. I'm still not awake. The housekeeper was speechless, but she was used to Evan's occasional weird, yet oddly reasonable, behavior when he was in a bad mood. Then I'll leave first. The food is here. Make sure you eat, young master. Oh, and take your medicine. The doctor said not to eat so many cherries again. Right. This was all those damn cherries' fault. Evan curled up under the blanket until he could barely breathe. He cracked open a small gap and stared blankly at the abstract painting on the wall. If he hadn't eaten those cherries and passed out, he wouldn't have woken up with these weird, unidentifiable memories. The more he resisted them, the clearer the plots and character settings became. He wasn't the protagonist. He was the most disgusting kind of cannon fodder villain in a novel. Thinking about that, the back of his head throbbed again, and his eyes burned hot. He almost cried from sheer frustration. Fine, so he wasn't the protagonist. But why did he have to play the villain? That was just too much. His clear, dark eyes slowly turned red. Evan threw off the blanket with force, stood up on the bed, and tried to expel those chaotic memories from his head. He must have hit his head on the wall and read too many novels, and that was making him think crazy things. There was no way he was some cannon fodder villain in a book. After a round of mental reprogramming, Evan's mood improved visibly. He got out of bed barefoot and started eating. Sam walked in carrying a bowl of soup and was greeted by the sight of Evan devouring his food like a hungry animal. He froze for a moment. Evan was a simple person. All his emotions showed on his face. If he did manage to hide them, they'd leak out somewhere else. For example, whenever he was upset or sad, he'd eat without any regard for dignity, using violent eating to vent. Ev. Sam walked over, set down the bowl, and held Evan's hand, the one that was frantically scooping rice. Does your stomach still hurt? Evan looked up. It's fine. But the moment he raised his head, his reddened eyes and damp lashes gave him away. Combined with the tears glistening in his eyes, Sam immediately tightened his grip. The smile that had just begun to form on his lips vanished. Is something else wrong? Let's go back to the hospital. Having known each other for 18 years, Sam knew that if Evan burst into tears, it wasn't a big deal. But this, looking like he had just cried and was trying to hold it in, was the scariest. It meant something bad had happened, and Evan didn't know how to deal with it. In 18 years, Sam had only seen Evan like this once before. That was when the two of them had a cold war and refused to look at each other. Evan got so angry he wanted to break off their friendship but didn't know how to say it, so he ended up frustrating himself to the point of tears. It's nothing. Evan was startled by his tense expression and ended up comforting him instead. I just woke up, so my memory's a little fuzzy. And I was hungry. That's all. Really, don't worry. He looked at the bowl of soup. Did you make this for me? You didn't have to go to all that trouble. Isn't that what the housekeeper is for? You've always loved the soup I make. Sam still wasn't reassured. Really, I'm fine. Those chaotic memories had settled down a lot. Evan was in a better mood. He pulled his hand away and went back to eating, slower this time, a smile returning to his face. Sam finally relaxed. He ladled out some soup and moved to feed it to Evan. What are you doing? Normally, this would have been a natural gesture. But now, Evan looked at him as if he'd seen something terrifying and pulled back. Feeding you, obviously. Sam studied him. What's wrong? The question made Evan a little flustered. He remembered all the times he'd been so lazy that he let Sam feed him. How embarrassing. The newly suppressed memories rose up again. Evan thought, with a personality like Sam's, it would be a waste if he weren't the kind of beloved character everyone adored. The memories were getting more and more real. Most of it was probably true. He felt like the protagonist in one of those awakened memory novels. Too bad he wasn't the protagonist. Why did he have to be the vicious cannon fodder? What was so vicious about him anyway? Inside his heart, Evan was crying a river, filled with frustration and anger. Seeing him dazed, his lips trembling, Sam quickly set down the bowl. I won't feed you anymore. Don't cry. I'm not crying. Evan was extremely sensitive to the word cry. He snapped out of his daze, put down his bowl, and looked at Sam. Why would you? The moment Evan heard the name Xianxia, he perked up. Who's that? Jake didn't answer. Evan waited, then fell asleep without realizing it. When he groggily opened his eyes to check his phone, it was already dark outside. Jake had replied with something completely unrelated to the earlier question. I have a friend. Checking the time, the message had come in half an hour ago. Evan blinked and asked back, what about your friend? Jake, I have a friend. He likes his best friend, but he doesn't know if he should say anything. What do you think? The topic shifted so fast Evan couldn't keep up. That friend is you, isn't it? He didn't think too hard about it. His throat felt dry, so he went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and downed it in one go. The cool liquid slid down his throat. Evan sighed contentedly, curled up on the corner of the sofa, and continued texting Jake. But Jake didn't reply for a long time. Evan frowned, curious about why that question was so hard to answer. He wasn't the type to be glued to chat apps, so he opened a different app and started scrolling through videos. He had long set the class group chat to do not disturb, but he still received notifications when someone tagged everyone. Short video after short video, the top of his screen kept showing group messages. Annoyed, he tapped in. And immediately saw a toxic atmosphere. A bunch of attacking comments, all aimed at one person. Julian Bach. Scrolling up, there wasn't even a real reason. Evan was already in a bad mood. Seeing so many people mocking Julian, using nasty words, he couldn't help typing, "Don't you guys get tired of this? A bunch of kids. 12th grade. If they had that much energy to insult people, why not put it into studying?" The more Evan thought about it, the angrier he got. His character setting and Julian's flashed through his mind. Since he was a vicious cannon fodder villain, he might as well lean into it. Take Julian's side and fight back properly. So he did. Evan sent several sarcastic messages in a row, "It's late at night. Did all of you lose your minds? Having a meltdown here? Need me to recommend a good hospital? Go get treated before you come out." Tagging everyone to drag them into your boring, childish argument? At first, a lot of people were texting in the group. But after Evan sent those messages, no one dared to reply. He pouted and specifically tagged the guy who started the name-calling and had been rallying everyone, Leo Lin, talk. Julian Bach is always sulking and ignoring everyone. I only said a few things. Look at how everyone treats him, that shows how awful he is. Called out, Leo was forced to respond. Besides, we're talking about him. Why are you getting involved, Evan? His tone was already much more respectful than when he insulted Julian, and he didn't dare be disrespectful. In class, Evan was someone you didn't want to mess with. Not because of his family background or backup, but because he had a sharp tongue. Anyone who provoked him got it back. No one in class had ever won an argument against him. Those who had tasted defeat didn't dare bother him, and those who hadn't saw what happened and stayed clear. But he wasn't hated for it. If anything, people liked him more. Why can't I get involved? Evan remembered that embarrassing misunderstanding and quickly typed, "You're insulting my deskmate." Leo laughed coldly. I didn't know you were so enthusiastic. You speak up for him, but he won't even thank you. He might even think you're meddling. Evan, I say what I want. I don't care if he thanks me or not. Unlike some people who can't insult alone and have to drag others in. Even 3-year-olds don't play that game anymore. Leo, hit where it hurt, panicked and sent a long string of messages. He still didn't dare say anything harsh to Evan, so he kept dragging Julian to mock him. Evan got tired of the noise and privately messaged the class president, the group admin, asking for Leo to be muted. The class group fell completely silent. Evan sent a middle finger emoji and stopped. Only then did a few others dare to pop up and try to calm things down. Don't be mad. No one meant any harm. It's just that Julian is really hard to get along with. Yeah. Leo tagged him so many times asking for help, and Julian never once replied. Exactly. We're all classmates. No need to be like that. Evan, I don't want to talk to people with brain problems either. The group went quiet again. Leo, unable to message in the group, frantically sent Evan friend requests to reason with him. Evan rejected them all, changed his position, and went back to scrolling videos. Jake, who had been missing for a while, finally came online. No, I told you, it's my friend. I just took a shower. Why are you already fighting in the class group when I get back? Oh, Evan replied. Leo deserved it. Jake, is it because he talked about Julian? Evan was confused. If he insulted either of you, I'd fight back too. What does Julian have to do with it? Jake called. Evan answered casually, put the phone down, and closed his eyes on the sofa. He thought Jake wanted to talk about something important, but the other end was silent. If you're not going to say anything, why call? Evan glared at the phone, wishing he could crawl through the screen and smack Jake. I'm talking. Jake laughed. Why are you so hot-tempered today? Probably just out of the shower. His voice was a little raspy, actually quite pleasant. Evan lay on his stomach, propping his chin with his left hand, swinging his legs idly. I'm not hot-tempered. Nothing else. Just wanted to ask, since when does Julian Bach rank as high as me? Jake asked. Evan remembered what he'd typed earlier and picked up the phone. You called just to ask that? No, Jake said slowly. Still about my friend. I'm running out of patience. Evan urged him to get to the point. Do you think he should confess? Depends on the personality of the person he likes. If confessing means they can't even be friends anymore, then don't do it. Evan grumbled. I've never dated. Asking me for advice is useless. Jake thought for a moment. The other person is a little dense. Sleepiness hit Evan. He yawned, his voice fuzzy. If your friend dares, then confess. He pressed his face into the sofa pillow, closed his eyes, listening to Jake's soft breathing through the phone. His consciousness slowly drifted. He doesn't dare. In the quiet space, the teenager's cautious voice came through the line. Evan, suppose that person was you, and my friend was me. If I confessed to you, what would you say? Jake switched the phone to his other hand, nervously listening for a response. But none came. Half his heart went cold. The excitement and hope that had risen were instantly extinguished. He changed the subject. I'm just giving an example. What are you doing? Still no response. Jake raised an eyebrow. A thought crossed his mind. Evan? Did you fall asleep? Steady breathing answered his question. He really had fallen asleep. Jake rubbed his forehead and laughed, unsure whether to feel lucky or disappointed by the lack of an answer. Good night, he said softly. But he couldn't hang up. He opened his Love Manual app and continued studying techniques. Evan was woken by his mother. He groggily sat up and rubbed his eyes. Mom, why are you in my room? Look where you are. Seeing his messy hair and slightly pouty lips from not enough sleep, Tina laughed. Why didn't you go to your room? Sleeping here? Evan woke up a little more. I was texting Jake. He looked for his phone and saw that the voice call was still ongoing. Thinking Jake had forgotten to hang up, he ended it. Eat yet? Tina reached out to smooth his hair. The gentle, feather-light movement made Evan squint comfortably. He smiled. I ate. What about you? Why are you home so late? Tina said, I was chatting with some friends for too long. All right, you look like you can barely keep your eyes open. Go back to bed. Evan nodded, forced himself to wash up, then turned off the light and lay down. Right before he fell into a deep sleep, he vaguely remembered Jake saying something as he was drifting off. He'd heard it but was too tired to make out the words. Something about a confession? Early the next morning, Evan instinctively grabbed his phone as soon as he opened his eyes. After going through a few routine motions, he fully woke up and noticed 2 unread messages, one from Jake, one from Julian. Julian, Evan, thank you for speaking up for me. But you don't need to do that anymore. It's a waste of your time. Jake, why did you hang up? I was about to fall asleep on the call with you. Evan didn't think a few messages were a waste of time, but he sensed that Julian didn't want to be involved with him. The words were distant. Still, Julian had always been solitary, so Evan didn't take it personally. He replied, no problem. That's what classmates are for, smiley face. As for Jake, he switched styles completely, don't say such cheesy things again. It was still early, so they were probably both asleep. Evan got up, washed up, and went to the living room. The housekeeper had already prepared breakfast. Seeing him up early, she was a little surprised and set out his portion. "Young master, you're up early. Going out today?" No. Evan smiled, thanked her, and ate slowly. He glanced at his phone and saw that Julian had replied. It was a bowing emoji, so formal that Evan didn't know how to respond. While he was hesitating, footsteps sounded behind him. The footsteps were so familiar that Evan immediately flipped his phone face down on the table and focused on eating, a hint of panic still in his eyes. "Don't pretend." Mr. Cole sat down next to him, his expression calm but his tone disapproving. "How many times have I told you? Don't look at your phone while eating. It's bad for your health." "Dad, what time did you get home last night?" Evan grinned, deliberately changing the subject. "I thought you'd stay at the office again." Mr. Cole was 45, but his good mood, he never got angry, meant his face was wrinkle-free. He looked barely over 30. He started to say something, then shook his head and picked up his chopsticks. Evan ate quickly, then took his phone to the sofa, turning his back to his father. When he saw the screen clearly, he froze. His pupils shook violently. Turns out, when he'd panicked and flipped the phone over, his fingers had tapped the meme panel and sent a series of images. Evan, image, someone being a creep.jpg, Evan, image, come over tonight.jpg, Evan, image, holding a rose, winking seductively.jpg, what the hell? When he'd flipped the phone over, he'd accidentally sent a bunch of weird memes. His mind went blank. He stared at the phone for a long time, then frantically recalled all those messy memes. First a typo, then wrong memes. Once could be a misunderstanding. Twice was hard to explain. He now looked exactly like a creep with bad intentions toward Julian, always waiting for a chance to flirt. Exhausted, Evan flopped onto the sofa, stared at his phone with dead eyes, and slowly typed an explanation, accidental tap. "I'm really sorry." This time Julian replied quickly, no need to apologize. Life was short. 2 misunderstandings were nothing. Evan blinked, hypnotized himself into believing that, and felt much better. A shadow fell over him. He sat up straight, but it was too late. Mr. Cole glanced at the phone beside him, had clearly seen the misleading memes, and his expression shifted dramatically. Evan's eyes widened. He tried to explain. "Dad, let me explain. You're in 12th grade and you're sending this kind of stuff to people." The phone screen wasn't huge, but those memes were eye-catching. Mr. Cole didn't even need to read the text to understand. "I didn't send them on purpose. I'm not harassing anyone." Evan grabbed his father's sleeve, blinking rapidly, and asked sincerely, "Dad, does your son really look like that kind of person?" Mr. Cole went silent. He stared at Evan, his eyes full of obvious suspicion. Evan's face turned red under that stare. "I accidentally tapped them. I really don't know how to harass anyone." Mr. Cole glanced at the phone again, this time reading the text below. He cleared his throat. "When school starts, focus on studying." "Of course." Evan immediately agreed. Mr. Cole pulled his hand back, said nothing more, straightened his clothes, and left for work. The moment he was gone, Evan collapsed onto the sofa like a zombie, covering his face, not wanting to move. If he'd sent those to Jake or Sam, it wouldn't have mattered. He'd gotten those memes from them anyway. But Julian was different. They weren't close, and the hot pot dinner had already been awkward. Evan's mood was indescribably complicated. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time, but he couldn't send anything. Just as he was about to close the app, Julian messaged him first. It was a head-patting emoji. The gesture and expression both showed excessive closeness. Evan was stunned. Before he could add an emoji and reply, Julian suddenly recalled the message. "Evan?" "Julian, accidental tap." Evan felt a little strange. In his opinion, even if you sent a head pat emoji by accident, it was no big deal. But Julian apparently didn't think so. Then we're even. Both accidental taps. Evan thought for a moment and replied. His phone buzzed non-stop. It was Sam, who had noticed Evan talking a lot in the class group. Like Jake, he was curious why Evan had taken Julian's side. It's not just Julian. If it were someone else, I'd have spoken up too. Why are you two reacting so strongly? Evan pouted. Sam caught the key word. Two? Did Jake ask you to? Evan set back a lazy yeah. Sam, just curious. You're not the type to meddle. He would be from now on. After all, his character setting was a vicious cannon fodder villain. He had to do hateful, vicious things to fit the role. Evan held his phone with both hands and typed, "It's not meddling." He felt awkward last time. It's normal for me to say a few words for him now. The phone wasn't light. Holding it up got tiring. Evan shifted position, squeezed his arm, and realized he should really exercise more. Jake and Sam were both so tall, and he was still stuck. He couldn't fall behind. On a whim, Evan changed into workout clothes and went out for a run. Half an hour later, he came back pale from exhaustion. The housekeeper was watering plants. She saw him and hurried over to support him. You're not in good shape. Don't overdo it. I didn't know it was this bad. Evan sat down heavily, so tired his voice shook. I barely ran and I'm already like this. So weak. The housekeeper brought him a glass of warm water. After drinking it, Evan recovered some strength and staggered to the bathroom. Half an hour later, he sat comfortably on the sofa watching TV, then looked down to see several unread messages. All from Jake and Sam. He didn't need to guess what they'd sent. Sure enough, Jake, come out. I'll buy you dinner. Jake, come with me today. Don't answer anyone else. Jake, it's been a long time since we ate alone. Sam, come over and play games. Sam, just us. Don't invite Jake. Sam, I booked a VIP room. Waiting for you. Before Evan could reply, Jake called. He hung up, and immediately Sam called. Had these two planned this together? Or were their brainwaves synced? Evan found it ridiculous and didn't want to answer. He hung up and texted Jake back. Before he could finish typing, Sam's message popped up at the top. Are you texting Jake? Technically, no. Wait, how did he know? Evan's eyes widened. He instinctively asked, did you install a camera in my house? Sam replied instantly, because I know Jake too well. Evan latched onto that. And you still say there's nothing between you and Jake? Sam, there really isn't. Just a rivalry. That's nothing. In a dimly lit room, Sam lowered his eyes slightly, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Evan, stop imagining that there's anything between me and him. His fingers paused. He frowned and typed with some discomfort, me and him? We're just rivals. He deliberately kept it vague, afraid Evan would figure out the truth. But Evan didn't notice at all. Why? Did you two have a fight? At the same time, Jake was also sending messages non-stop. The constant notifications gave Evan a headache. He quickly stopped them. Stop sending. I see them. Too lazy to think about who to go with, he screenshotted both conversations and sent them to the 3-person group chat. You both want me to go out. Who should I go with? Then he muted both of them and the group, found a movie, and watched it. When he finally opened his phone again, there were over 300 messages in the group. All sarcastic jabs and attacks between the two, still going strong even as he opened it. Evan darkened. He immediately decided not to go with either of them. Stop fighting like elementary schoolers. No, elementary schoolers are less childish than you two. Jake sent a whining emoji. Evan, I'm not an elementary schooler. Sam is the elementary schooler. I just want to eat with you. Sam didn't bother with words. He tagged Jake and sent a barrage of middle finger emojis. In Evan's 18 years of memory, Sam had never shown such clear dislike and rejection of anyone. Jake was the only exception. Sam was gentle. Even with people he didn't like, he remained polite and smiling. Evan was more straightforward, hate was hate, like was like. He didn't know how to fake it. He'd once asked Sam why, and Sam said those people weren't worth showing his true self. In other words, he felt they were a waste of time. Yet here he was, showing his true self in front of Jake. Those two definitely had something going on. They were just hiding it from him. The more Evan thought about it, the more convinced he became. Maybe Jake had fallen for Sam, realized he liked guys, and later developed something with the male lead, Xianxia. That made perfect sense. Evan took a deep breath and mentally turned all their insults into flirting meant to get each other's attention. He decisively left the group, leaving one last message: I'll give you two some space. You two, develop well. No need to involve me. Jake didn't understand? Sam had a vague idea. He immediately called Evan. This time, Evan answered quickly. I told you, me and Jake are not what you think. Sam said. Evan nodded. I know. His voice was soft, like he was comforting a kid who didn't get candy. I know everything. That wasn't knowing. That was clearly not believing. Sam laughed in frustration. He was about to explain further when Evan cut him off. If you both want to go out, go with each other. I'm not coming. I'm going out with someone else. Sam pressed his lips together. All his words were replaced by the phrase someone else. Who? My desk mate. Evan grumbled. We keep having misunderstandings. I'm going out to clear things up. He already agreed. I'm about to leave. No, Sam immediately refused. What misunderstanding? The embarrassing thing had happened twice. Evan was too ashamed to tell Sam, so he just said vaguely, nothing. Sam was silent for a few seconds, then laughed. Fine. I'll come with you. Before Evan could respond, he added, I've wanted to get to know your deskmate for a while. I think we'll get along. He knew Evan too well. He knew exactly what to say. Sure enough, Evan happily asked, Really? Last time you were so cold to him, I thought you hated him. So this deskmate was definitely someone Sam needed to get to know. He typed flatly, Really? Last time we just didn't know each other. This time I'll come and get to know him with you. Evan couldn't see Sam's expression. He thought Sam genuinely wanted to be friends with Julian, so he smiled and opened Julian's chat. He had indeed already asked Julian. Evan, want to grab a bite to eat? Julian, sure. Evan, I have a friend who wants to meet you. Would you mind if he came along? Julian didn't answer immediately, but typing appeared at the top. Evan sensed his hesitation. He scratched his face, feeling he shouldn't have asked that way. Julian didn't have many friends. Evan thought having more friends was good, but Julian might not agree. Bringing an extra person was indeed a bit abrupt. Evan tried to recall the message, but it was too late. He sent an emoji, then, seeing that text explanations took too long, sent a voice message, never mind. Let's just eat together when school starts. The teenager's clear, gentle voice, probably because he was close to the mic, made the last two words a bit faint, like he was whispering right into someone's ear. Julian put down the phone, played the voice message, and held it to his ear. The voice rang in his ear. He could almost see the teenager with slightly curved eyes, smiling as he talked to him. He played the message again and again. Only when he'd listened enough did he put the phone down. The screen glowed, illuminating the dark room. Julian's face in the dim light was shadowed. He stared at Evan's dinner invitation. His normally still, dead eyes flickered, and finally gathered into a soft laugh. Julian picked up the phone and typed back. Julian gently tried to pull his hand back, but couldn't. Evan let go, then started staring at Julian's hand as if it were a perfect work of art, his fingers tracing over each knuckle and fingertip. "Your hands are really nice." After complimenting, Evan sighed softly. "Julian, you're too thin. You need to eat more." The concern made Julian press his lips together. He slowly lowered his head, acutely aware of the heat rising in his ears. His body followed, growing so warm he could barely hide it. Wherever Evan had touched felt like it had been set on fire, hot enough to scare him. His heart began to pound, threatening to leap out of his chest. Julian suddenly pulled his fingers away. Only then did Evan realize his actions had crossed a line. He whispered an apology. "Sorry. I spaced out again." "It's fine." Julian didn't look up. His Adam's apple bobbed as he answered in a hoarse voice. "Are you hot?" Evan couldn't see his face, but his bright red ears were very noticeable. Evan asked with concern. "A little." Julian raised a hand to cover his ear, turned his back to Evan, and looked around. His voice was flat. "Let's keep looking for clues." "Okay." Evan agreed immediately. He was feeling strangely hot too, fanning his face with his hand, wanting to get out of here as fast as possible. He pushed open the coffin lid, his fear forgotten. Only when he saw the prop skeleton inside did he snap back, his arm trembling slightly. Luckily, there was a very obvious hidden compartment under the skeleton. Evan reached in and pushed it open, revealing a lockbox. On the box was an obvious question: why did the person living in the previous room end their life? Below the question was a rotating lock. The first face said academics. Evan turned it. The second face said romance. The third said family. Evan chose family, pulled hard, and the lock opened. "The box is open." Evan called out. "I found something over here." Julian, not far away, spoke up. Evan opened the box. Inside was a tiny key. He grabbed it and quickly walked over to Julian. In front of them was a floorboard of a different color, clearly something that could be pried open. Evan looked around, then held out the key. "Is this key for prying up this board?" Julian took the key. His fingertips inevitably brushed against Evan's palm. Evan was extremely ticklish. Almost reflexively, he grabbed the key and Julian's whole hand. The space fell into a terrifying silence. Evan held his breath, then quickly let go. "A little ticklish." He explained his actions with a forced smile. Julian nodded slightly, inserted the key into the gap, gently pried, and the board popped up easily, revealing stairs below. "I think this haunted house has 2 basement levels." Evan remembered the online pictures. He helped Julian push the board aside. "We probably go down from here." He was about to climb down when Julian suddenly grabbed his wrist, his voice low. "Let me go first." The steady words made Evan stop instinctively. He stepped back 2 paces, waited for Julian to go first, then followed. Watching Julian's slightly bent back, he couldn't help asking, "Are you afraid something down there will scare me?" Julian didn't answer. There was light below. Evan carefully watched Julian's thin back. He didn't interact much with Julian normally. 2 years as classmates, and Evan couldn't even find any information about him in his memories. Naturally, he knew nothing about Julian's family background. Silence slowly spread, leaving only the sound of footsteps echoing. Evan didn't ask further, quietly following Julian. They reached a long flight of stairs, then came to a door. Before Evan could push it open, he suddenly heard a familiar voice from inside. "Stay 3 meters away from me." It was Sam. His tone practically screamed disgust. "You stay away from me." Jake's voice was sharp. "I really don't understand how." "Evan puts up with growing up with you." The corner of Evan's eye twitched. He could imagine that once he opened the door, those two would probably start throwing punches. Strangely, Julian, who had been holding the doorknob ready to open it, suddenly paused. The overhead light cast shadows. Due to the angle, Julian's face was hidden in darkness, making it impossible to see his expression. Evan only saw his lips pressed into a thin line. His usually expressionless face grew even colder. The hand gripping the doorknob tightened bit by bit, as if he wanted to crush whatever he hated so much. His fingers turned white from the force, the tips reddening abnormally. Evan couldn't help reaching out and poking Julian's shoulder. "Aren't you going to open it?" The teenager, who had his back to Evan, suddenly turned around. Deep in his dark eyes flashed an emotion Evan couldn't catch. Between his brows lingered a difficult-to-describe restraint. Evan froze, his lips slightly parted. "Did I hurt you?" His voice was very soft, like he was talking to a child. There was even a hint of comfort in it. Julian snapped out of it, quickly letting go. Those strange emotions vanished without a trace. He answered calmly, "No. Just spaced out." Seeing he didn't want to talk, Evan didn't press further. He reached out and pushed the door open. Sam and Jake were arguing. Hearing the noise, they both looked over. The moment they saw Evan, they both hurried toward him. "Evan, I've been waiting here forever." Sam reached out to grab Evan. Jake looked behind Evan while pushing Sam's hand away. "Why are you so late? Where's the person who went with you?" Julian stepped out from behind the door unhurriedly, ignoring the two of them. He walked past them and began searching for clues for this stage. Jake asked in a strange tone, "Evan, when you two were together, nothing happened, right?" He turned and stared at Evan. Evan raised an eyebrow and asked back, "What could happen?" He thought Jake was asking if he'd done anything embarrassing out of fear. He pouted. "I'm very brave. The whole way, nothing happened. Just found clues and came here." The more Evan talked, the more guilty he felt. He was afraid Julian might turn around and expose him. Luckily, Julian didn't. Evan sighed in relief. When he looked down at his hand, he could still feel the warmth of pressing his palm against Julian's. He shyly pressed his lips together, his fingers moving slightly before he tucked them into his pocket. His cheeks felt a little hot. "What's wrong?" Sam put the back of his hand to Evan's forehead. "Your face is a little red. Are you too hot?" "No." Evan pushed his hand down. "It's a bit stuffy in here. Let's find clues." Remembering what Julian had said earlier, Evan paused. Was the hot Julian mentioned also just an excuse, like Evan's now? "Evan." Jake called. Evan snapped back. "What?" "Walk behind me. I'll protect you." Jake pulled him behind his back. This stage probably has actors jumping out to cause trouble. The space was large, with 3 doors nearby. Dozens of small wooden boxes were arranged on the floor. The overhead lights were dim, unable to reach far. With fake bloodstains on the floor, the gloomy atmosphere was maxed out. Sam snorted, put his arm around Evan's shoulder, and rested his chin on his own arm, his face nearly pressed against Evan's as he faced Jake. "You think Evan is as scared as you?" That made even Evan, who had been about to argue, nod in agreement. "I'm not scared." He didn't notice that the distance between him and Sam was almost zero. If he turned his head, his lips would touch Sam's cheek. Jake saw this and his eyes turned red. He grabbed Sam's collar and yanked hard. The movement was so strong that Evan was affected too. His foot slipped, and he suddenly fell backward. Seeing that, Jake let go of Sam and hurriedly reached out to catch him. Evan had already braced himself to hit the floor. He didn't expect Jake to catch him, so he closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and waited for the pain. Suddenly, a hand appeared at his waist, steadily catching him. Gently but firmly, it pushed him forward, helping him stand up straight. Evan opened his eyes. He thought Jake had caught him, so he playfully pinched the back of the hand at his waist. "Why did you grab Sam out of nowhere? You almost made me fall. But you caught me in time, so He didn't get to finish, because he saw Jake's face, like he'd just swallowed a fly, next to him, his arm still stretched out toward Evan. Jake was on this side. Sam was behind Jake. Then who had caught him? Evan's dark eyes darted around. He tilted his head slightly. Julian stood beside him, his handsome face expressionless. Even when Evan pinched the back of his hand hard, he showed no emotion. The moment Evan saw him, his fingers jerked back as if electrocuted. His whole body was terribly embarrassed. He avoided eye contact and stammered an apology. I didn't know it was you. Sorry. I didn't mean to pinch you. I thought it was Jake." Julian withdrew his hand and said flatly, "It's fine." Jake stopped Sam, who was about to come over, pushed him back, and stepped up next to Evan first. His usually cold face was now full of concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Evan smiled. "Thanks to Julian." "Good." Sam blocked in front of Evan and said meaningfully, "Some people are too rough." "Evan, come with me." Jake's anger flared. He pointed straight at Sam's nose. "If you hadn't been pressing against Evan like that, I wouldn't have done it. Evan and I have always been that close." They kept arguing. Evan didn't pay attention. His gaze passed over Sam and landed on the distance. The teenager was standing by the door near the corner, head down, fingers working on the lock. His profile was half hidden in the shadows, looking somewhat gloomy. Maybe feeling Evan's gaze, or maybe drawn by the arguing, Julian looked back. His dark eyes were still and calm, like a deep sea without sunlight, without a single ripple. They silently stared at each other across a few meters. Evan's arm was shaken hard by Jake. Their voices buzzed in his ear. Even though they were right next to him, they sounded faint and surreal. At that moment, the only clear thing was Julian's eyes. From no warmth to gentle, until only Evan filled them. His slowly beating heart seemed to skip a beat. A nameless emotion spread from deep inside him, seeping through his entire body. Evan's cheeks reacted to that emotion, first warm, then hot, until they burned so much he felt dizzy. Much later, he would learn that this unfamiliar feeling, never experienced in 18 years, was called heart flutter. Evan. His chin was grabbed and lifted. He snapped back to reality, all emotions retreating like a tide. He blinked. Sam's unhappy face appeared before him. "What?" Evan mumbled, pulling Sam's fingers off to free his chin. "What were you staring at?" Sam asked, noticing Evan's slightly red face and frowning. "Evan, nothing." He tilted his head. Julian was still examining the lock, as if nothing had happened. Still saying nothing. Jake put his arm around Evan's neck, unhappy. "Why stare at boring people? Look at me more." He pinched Evan's cheek playfully. Evan's skin was very nice, fair, clean, no pores or flaws. It felt as smooth as silk. Just touching it felt like sinking into cotton candy, hard to let go. Before Jake could pinch more than a few times, Evan pushed him away unhappily. His attention was on Jake's other hand, so he didn't notice what had been said. "You almost made me fall earlier, and now you're pinching my face." He held his reddened cheek and glared at Jake and Sam, like an angry cat whose ear had been touched. "Find clues so we can get out. No more fighting." "Yes, sir." Jake answered quickly but didn't move. Sam didn't bother rolling his eyes. "The clues are definitely in the boxes. Evan, come check the boxes with me." He took Evan's hand, but after 2 steps, Evan pulled away. "Too hot." Evan lowered his eyes, mumbling. "And holding hands feels weird." "Exactly," Jake said, putting his hand on Evan's shoulder. Before he could do anything else, Evan dodged. "Don't put your arm around my neck either." Evan remembered their heights and said angrily, "You're so tall. Hooking your arm around my neck makes my neck sore." "No holding hands." Sam smiled and ruffled Evan's hair. "Just used to it from childhood." Jake's face was full of disgust. He crossed his arms and stared at Sam with contempt. Sam's hand was gentle, even comfortable, so Evan didn't push him away. He just felt like this action made him look like a little puppy. He widened his eyes and grabbed his own head. "No more head ruffling either. I won't grow taller." Remembering he was in a haunted house, Evan quickly moved away from them. "Let's find clues and get out." He'd had enough. He never wanted to come here again. Evan thought about going over to Julian, but after what just happened, he felt too shy. Instead, he stood in front of the boxes and opened them one by one. All empty. Only one box remained. Evan didn't hesitate and flipped it open. A plastic skull stared back at him. It looked so fake it didn't scare him. Instead, he immediately noticed the key under the skull. "There's a key." Evan picked it up and looked at Julian. "Is this for the door?" At the same time, Julian opened the door in front of him. Evan froze and instinctively walked over. "Wasn't it locked? How did you open it without a key?" Julian paused. "Combination lock." "Where did you find the combination?" Evan was even more curious. Halfway there, Jake blocked him and demanded the key. Evan casually shoved the key into Jake's chest and went to the open door. It really was a combination lock, the 3-digit rotating kind. It was currently set to 799. Evan didn't see any hint for that lock. He was about to ask when he was distracted by what was inside the room. The room was full of props and several notebooks. He walked in and picked up the nearest notebook. It was an introduction to the game's background. They were already in the 4th room before getting the background info. How useful. Evan pouted and skimmed it. Very horror novel style. Too bad as a puzzle game, it wasn't great. Too scary. There was another room ahead. They needed to turn in many clues. If they didn't have enough, they'd have to go back. Evan put the notebook down, deciding to give feedback after getting out. The room was too dark. Only a faint light came from outside. Before Evan could search further, Sam and Jake barged in noisily. Evan pushed them aside and looked toward the door. Julian, who had opened the door, was gone. He squeezed past Sam and looked out. Julian was standing at another door. "You really care about him?" Sam appeared beside him. Evan wanted to explain, but then realized all his recent actions did show he cared a lot about Julian. He had nothing to say. Thinking that, he replied, "I care about you guys too." If that sentence didn't have the word guys, Sam would have been very happy. But in Evan's eyes, he was now completely tied to someone else. "It's not the same." Sam shook his head, serious. "Evan, we've known each other for years." He paused. "Even Jake, you've known him a long time. But Julian is different." He didn't say harsh words, but Evan understood. What gave Julian the right to be on their level? Evan turned, cupped Sam's face with both hands, and squished it. "Sam, what are you jealous of? No matter how I treat others, you'll always be my best friend." He thought this would make Sam happy. Instead, the teenager froze, his expression unreadably complex, with no joy at all. Evan tilted his head, confused. "Did I say something wrong?" They'd known each other for over a decade. Weren't they best friends? "Right." Sam lowered his eyes, his voice dropping. "You're right. But Evan, I don't want to be your best friend." Now Evan froze, his eyes full of suspicion. "You're not going to say something childish like you want to be my father, are you?" That trope isn't popular anymore. No, Sam laughed despite himself. Do I seem like that type? No, Evan let go and ruffled Sam's hair. Then you're my best friend. The word friend was painful in certain situations, but before anything was made clear, it was impossible to refute. Sam's eyes darkened. The words on the tip of his tongue eventually turned into a gentle smile. Right. Just don't forget me when you make new friends. Of course not. Evan said. After comforting him, Evan felt both happy and noticed that Sam's mood had been a bit unstable lately. He couldn't help glancing at Jake, who was holding his phone and pulling at his hair. What are you doing? Evan was amused by Jake's slightly ridiculous actions. He quietly approached and slapped him hard on the shoulder. Jake hurriedly put his phone away. Evan only managed to see two words, love/relationship. So he and Sam were definitely dating. Evan immediately looked at Sam. Sam had just calmed down. Why are you looking at me like that? Jake had already recovered from his panic, returning to his usual aloof demeanor. Evan, what were you talking about with Sam just now? You touched his face. I want that too. Evan's mood was complicated. Are you a puppy? Why do you like being touched? Jake blinked. I'm your puppy. Evan's very own. Evan quickly covered Jake's mouth, forcibly cutting off the rest, his cheeks flushing hot. So embarrassing. How could Jake say those things so casually? His palm itched from the warm, slightly wet breath. Evan's eyes widened. He looked at his hand covering Jake's mouth, then at Jake's curved eyes. He pulled his hand back and whacked Jake hard on the head. What are you doing? He was red with anger. My hand is dirty, and you dare, he couldn't finish. He just grabbed Jake's hair and messed it up until Jake begged for mercy. Didn't mean to. The teenager laughed softly, his brows full of affection. You were covering my mouth too tightly. I could barely breathe. Freak. Sam said coldly. Jake raised his eyes, lazily glanced at him, then leaned close to Evan's ear, his lips nearly touching it. Evan, stay away from people like Sam. Look at that language. Sam, he really couldn't be bothered with Jake. He didn't say anything else and turned to look for clues. Evan reached up and pushed Jake away. He also went into the room to find clues. Let's find clues. We can't stay here forever. And, he paused. Don't act like Sam, always pressing against me. It's scary. So what? Jake didn't see the problem. We're close. A little intimacy is fine. Evan still felt something was off, but didn't think much of it. He was quickly drawn to a clue hidden in the corner. He picked it up. It was a wooden key. I found a button. Jake picked up something. Evan also found a diary. No more useful clues in the room. Evan decided to check the other two rooms. As soon as he stepped out, Sam grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. I opened the second room. Come find clues with me. Before Evan could react, it went dark, followed by the sound of a door closing. He blinked and looked at the closed door. Why did you close the door? Don't want to talk to Jake. Sam rested his head on Evan's shoulder like he was whining. My head's a mess. I just want to be with you to sort it out. Evan believed that. And he didn't see anything wrong with it. Compared to Jake, Evan was quiet enough so he could help Sam think. Clearly. The room had no lights. Everything was too dark. Evan fumbled a few steps, then tripped over something and fell. At the last moment, Sam grabbed his arm and fell with him, acting as a cushion. Evan's face smacked into Sam's chest. He cried out in pain, then held his face and half rose to look at the floor. What did I trip on? The person beneath him didn't speak. Evan looked down and saw Sam staring at him. In the darkness, even though he couldn't see much, he could feel Sam's gaze growing hot. Evan. Sam called softly, grabbing Evan's wrist and gently pulling him forward. Evan wasn't prepared. He fell onto Sam, face to face, nearly nose to nose. Their breaths mingled. Evan froze, then struggled to get up. Why did you grab me out of nowhere? You scared me. He grumbled, still not sensing anything wrong, until he couldn't break free. Then he was a little surprised. Sam, let go. Evan said, trying to see him in the darkness. He couldn't see Sam's expression, only feel from his laugh that he was in a good mood. Get up. Evan urged. Can't just lie on the floor. The person beneath him didn't move. Only the hand holding Evan's wrist gently rubbed. The heat spread up his wrist. Evan, already feeling hot and suffocated, pulled his hand back harder. Then he realized his position, lying on top of Sam, was way too suggestive. He quickly scrambled up. Sam sat up right after, his eyes still on Evan. Why do you keep staring at me? Even through the darkness, that gaze was unmistakable. Evan dusted himself off. It's too dark in here. Let's go out. Silence behind him. He turned and saw Sam still sitting there. He walked over, bent down slightly, and waved a hand in front of Sam's face. Sam? Sam. Evan raised his voice. No answer. A strange atmosphere spread around him. Just as Evan was about to pinch Sam's face, Sam finally answered. I'm here. His low, soft voice rang in Evan's ear, quite pleasant. Evan touched his ear, slowly straightened up. Don't just sit on the floor like that, why aren't you getting up? Sam stood up, dusted himself off, and smiled. Nothing. Thanks for earlier. Evan remembered how Sam had cushioned his fall. Did it hurt? No, Sam said, then immediately changed his mind. Actually, maybe. Evan worried. Where? My arm. Sam moved his arm, sucking in air. I think I hit a bone. Hurts a little. Evan reached out and rubbed Sam's arm. Where? I'll tell the control room we're done. Let's go to the hospital. It's fine. Sam grabbed Evan's fumbling hand. Just a little pain. It's better now. Evan still wanted to go out, until Sam laughed out loud. Evan, you're still so easy to fool. Evan realized. You faked the pain? Not entirely. Sam said. I did hit my arm, but it stopped hurting long ago. Evan raised his hand and pinched Sam's shoulder hard, furious. You and Jake are both so annoying. I'm not like him. Sam cleared his name, grabbing Evan's wrist. Evan suddenly remembered Sam lying on the floor, holding him tight. What were you trying to do when you grabbed me earlier? Sam paused. Do you want the truth? Of course. Evan grumbled. Why would I listen to lies? Sam said, I wanted to, bang bang bang. The door was pounded. Jake, having waited too long, lost patience. Sam, what are you doing in there with Evan? I opened that room. Come out. Interrupted, Evan just wanted to leave. He pulled his hand back and went to open the door. Sam's unfinished words had to be swallowed. With the door open, faint light entered. The teenager standing there looked down at his hand, then sighed. Evan, we haven't found the clues in this room yet. He looked up and called to Evan, who was already outside. Won't you come help me look? Jake crossed his arms and swaggered in. I'll look. Evan, you wait at the door for me. Seeing him, Sam's expression turned cold. Then you look yourself. He brushed past Jake and headed for the door, but Jake's words stopped him. What did you do to Evan in there? Sam shot him a sideways glance, the corner of his mouth curling. His smile looked friendly, but his words were harsh. None of your business. Hearing them start again, Evan said helplessly, "Nothing. Both of you come out. I'll go in and look." Sam smiled and walked over, closing the door. "No need. You wait at the door. The psycho behind me and I have something to settle." Evan froze, then instinctively approached the door. Not because he was afraid they'd fight, but because he was afraid they'd do something unspeakable. Thinking that, he couldn't help knocking lightly on the door and whispering, "You two, don't overdo it." The two inside had no idea what he meant. Sam leaned against the table, expressionless, looking at Jake. "Let's talk properly." Jake tilted his chin, his expression somewhat contemptuous. "What do I have to say to you?" Evan quickly grew bored. He looked around and saw that the third room's door was open. Julian was probably inside. He walked in. This room had lights. Compared to the first two, the decor was quite cozy. Julian was sitting at a desk, his back to Evan, doing something. "Julian." Evan called. "Found any clues?" He looked around and approached Julian. "An old photo." Hearing Evan's voice, Julian tilted his head and held out the photo. "That's it?" Evan took the photo. The face in the photo was too blurry to see, only identifiable by clothing and height as a child around 10. The old photo had yellowed, with 2 holes torn in the top left corner. "Right. How did you open the first door's lock?" Evan's gaze landed on the door behind him, noticing this room also had a combination lock. "Did you guess, or?" "On the wall." Julian stood up, walked to the door, and pointed at the wall beside it. "Here." Curious, Evan leaned in and saw 3 tiny numbers carved there, impossible to notice without looking closely. He was a little dazed. He had invited everyone to this game, but he'd been sleepwalking the whole time. Julian was the one actually playing. "We've found a bunch of clues. I don't know how to get into the last room." Evan wanted to contribute. He looked around seriously for an exit. "Right here." Julian walked to the desk he had been sitting at and pulled it aside. A rope hung on the wall. He gently pulled it, and the wall split open. "That simple?" Evan muttered. "Julian, you're really good at this. You found almost all the clues." He turned to go call Sam and Jake, so he didn't see the slightly strange expression on the person behind him. The door opened. Sam and Jake both looked terrible. Evan looked left and right, confirming neither had any new injuries, and sighed in relief. At least they hadn't fought in there. "We found the other clues. Only this room left." Evan squeezed past them and quickly searched. After half a day, he only found a half-broken tambourine. "That's probably it. Let's go out," Evan urged. He grabbed the tambourine and the other clues and went into the third room first. Julian wasn't inside. He must have gone into the next room. Sam and Jake followed slowly, both scowling, standing on either side of Evan, looking like bodyguards. "What did you two talk about in there?" Evan couldn't suppress his curiosity. "Nothing." Facing Evan, Sam's coldness instantly melted into gentleness. "Just someone jealous that I grew up with you. He warned me to stay away from you." Evan was full of question marks. He turned to Jake. "Why would you warn him about that? So childish." "I never said that." Jake's cold face turned aggrieved. "Evan, Sam's trying to cause trouble between us. You've known me for years. Don't you understand me?" The last room wasn't big. There was only a table in the middle, with several boxes on it. A sign next to them said, "Please place your clues into the boxes. Once all boxes contain clues, the exit will open." Julian had already put in several clues and was waiting off to the side. Evan put all his clues in before answering Jake. "To me, you're both my best friends. I don't want you to fight." The boxes were full, but nothing happened. Evan looked around for cameras and noticed that everyone except him had strange expressions. Sam and Jake looked reluctant, for reasons Evan didn't understand. But even Julian looked a little off, a slight frown, eyes lowered, thinking about something. Evan, what's with you two? You don't want to be my friends? No, Sam spoke first. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then stopped. Jake was unusually silent, then changed the subject. Where's the door? Aren't we done? As he spoke, the wall opposite the table slid back, revealing a hidden door. Evan couldn't take the weird atmosphere. He stepped in first. The door led straight to the haunted house exit. Being inside so long, the sunlight outside hurt his eyes. He squinted, covering one side of his face, and went to retrieve his things from the lockers. When a staff member asked for feedback, he let out all his pent-up thoughts. Thank you very much for your suggestions. The staff member said gratefully. This mode is new, so there are many flaws. Your feedback is very helpful. Evan waved it off. Noticing that Sam and Jake hadn't picked up their things, he grabbed them. When he turned around, he saw the three of them being stopped at the exit. Julian was okay. Only one person was in front of him, apparently asking for directions, waving their arms. Julian pointed in a direction, and the person left. But in front of Sam and Jake, there were at least 7 or 8 people. Evan approached and heard Jake's annoyed tone, No. I'm not dating anyone. If you want a date, ask the guy next to me. Sam, maybe in a bad mood, sounded no better. No WeChat, no phone number. Sorry. Those few words shut down the people in front of them, slinking away. Of course, some didn't give up, holding up QR codes to add as friends. Evan handed Julian his phone and chatted. School's starting soon. Any plans? Julian thanked him quietly. No, they stood aside, waiting for Sam and Jake. Evan was thirsty. He looked around for a milk tea shop. Before he could take a step, he heard Sam point at him and say, No friend requests. The person standing over there is my boyfriend. 2 people standing nearby both looked at Evan. Meeting Sam's smiling eyes, Evan pointed at himself, uncertain. Me? Since when was he Sam's boyfriend? Wait, since when did Sam like guys? Sam nodded. Yeah. He winked frantically, signaling Evan to play along. Knowing he was using this excuse to escape, Evan forced a smile. The 2 people sighed, put away their phones, and left. Don't do that so suddenly next time. Evan handed Sam his phone. Why didn't you say Jake was your boyfriend? Jake narrowed his eyes, his tone extremely unpleasant. Evan, are you still trying to set me up with someone? Bingo. Evan rubbed his nose, didn't answer, tacitly admitting it. Jake laughed in frustration, rubbed his temples, but this time didn't bother to correct the assumption about him and Sam. I'm going to buy milk tea. Evan pointed to the shop next door. Text me what you want. Find somewhere to wait for me. I'll go with you. Sam and Jake said in unison. This time Evan didn't hesitate. He looked at Julian, who was silent. Come with me. The teenager, who had been holding his phone, looked up. His eyes showed surprise. This time, Evan caught his expression and smiled. Let's go. After all, he had invited Julian out. If he left him alone with Sam or Jake, it would be awkward. Julian quietly followed behind him. Sam watched them leave, then kicked the dazed Jake next to him. You want to die? Jake cursed in pain. Don't you think Julian is strange? Sam hinted. No kidding. Jake rolled his eyes. I noticed long ago. He's not just a classmate to Evan. Probably shares our intentions. Sam withdrew his gaze, idly kicking a small pebble on the ground, watching it move. After a while, as if bored, he kicked the pebble hard. It flew into the air, hit a trash can not far away, and disappeared. Sam looked up, his jaw tight, thin lips moving. Jake, you have no chance of taking him from me. Before Jake could retort, he laughed softly. Give up. You and Evan aren't a match. Even if Evan doesn't like me, he'll never like you. Jake laughed in anger. You're the most shameless person I know. Haven't you heard? If you grow up together and nothing romantic develops, it never will. Then my odds are still better than yours. Sam answered calmly. What do you want to drink? Evan opened the app on his phone and showed it to the person next to him. Same as you. Julian didn't take the phone. Ice or no ice? Evan asked, while opening his chat to ask Sam and Jake. The two answered quickly. Jake, the usual. Sam, Evan, just pick for me. If they weren't close and familiar, they wouldn't say things like that. Julian quietly looked away, hiding all his emotions. Only his tightly pressed lips revealed his current turmoil. Evan ordered the drinks Sam and Jake usually got, then remembered Julian hadn't answered about the temperature. He asked again. No ice. Julian said flatly. Evan sensed something different in his tone. He looked at Julian twice but saw nothing unusual, so he suppressed the strange feeling. The milk tea shop had AC on. It was crowded. No seats, so Evan and Julian stood aside to wait. Luckily, the staff were fast, and their number was soon called. Evan turned to get the drinks, but someone rushed by in front. Just as they were about to collide, a hand grabbed Evan's shoulder and pulled him aside, dodging the person. Evan blinked, dazed for a few seconds, then looked at the hand on his shoulder. Thanks. The hand quickly withdrew. Julian said, no problem. This time Evan was more careful. He squeezed through the crowd and successfully got the drinks. Here's yours. He handed Julian's drink over, then opened his own and took a few sips before noticing Julian hadn't moved, just staring at his hand. What? Evan looked down, puzzled, and saw that his drink had somehow become a couple's design, and he and Julian happened to be a matching pair. This milk tea shop does these events all the time. Thinking Julian cared about it, Evan explained. He, like everyone else, didn't mind. Nothing. Julian looked away, took his drink, and walked out. Evan followed slowly. He was so thirsty that by the time he reached Sam and Jake, he had already drunk more than half. Jake noticed the problem with the drink in one glance. He stared at Sam's drink and started protesting. Why are mine and Sam's drinks the couple design? It's the shop's event. Evan sat down on a bench in a gazebo, answering casually. Mine and Julian's are couple design too. Julian hadn't even put a straw in his drink. Sam held his own out. Let's swap. I don't drink ice. Julian didn't even look at him, walked past him, and sat across from Evan. Mine has no ice. Swap with me. Jake yelled. This time Julian didn't bother to answer. Evan was confused. I ordered the ones you two like. Why swap? It's just a cup design. Jake was choked speechless. He squeezed in next to Evan, drinking his milk tea while trying to kill Julian with his eyes. Compared to him, Sam was much calmer. After sitting down, he asked Evan where he wanted to go next. I'm done. Going home to rest. Evan wiped the sweat from his forehead. The haunted house had AC, going in and out of the milk tea shop wasn't. Too hot. But after sitting in the gazebo for a bit, he was burning up. He pressed his cold milk tea to his cheek and finally cooled down a bit. Okay, let's go home. Sam took out his phone to call a car. Jake opened his tissue pack and pulled one out to wipe Evan's sweat, but Evan took it. Give me one. Evan wiped his forehead, caught Jake's unhappy look, and blinked. I only used one tissue from you. I'll pay you back at home. Am I that stingy? Jake said. I just wanted to wipe your sweat for you. Evan's eyes widened. Jake's